please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live.
Hey everybody, so I'm back again with the great Pearlo Wisdom for another fantastic NHL talk video here, and today we're gonna be talking about some trade options here on the market in the NHL. Obviously, there's been everything going on recently has been largely free agency driven, but now with free agency, most of the free agents signed, we're getting back into a lot of trade rumors and stuff like that going on. So, the first team I want to bring up, well, first I want to say thank you, Pearlo, for coming on and being here. Really appreciate it.
I wouldn't miss it for the world, man. It's a freaking blast being on with you. Oh,
yeah, it's great. Great to have you on. And the first team I want to talk about is a team that absolutely has to make a move, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They won the Stanley Cup this past year, so obviously that's great for them, but they now find themselves in a very difficult salary cap situation with this team. And they are sitting right now at just under $3 million in cap space, and they still have to re-sign Anthony Cirelli, Erik Cernak, and Mikhail Sergachev, who are all restricted free agents. They clearly do not have the money to even really sign one of those guys, never mind all three. So Tampa's name obviously has been thrown around a lot in trade rumors because they have to do something with this money. And try and find a way to keep at least two of those guys, I would think. So, what do you see when you look at Tampa's situation, and what do you think is likely going to happen?
Well, it's quite the mess, isn't it? Compounded with the fact that they don't have a lot of players ready, maybe Cal Foote, to step in. I think they've talked about wanting to give Cal Foote a really good chance next year. But I've gone over this every way I can. I understand the Tyler Johnson thing. I'm sure they were all sitting there hoping and praying that somebody was going to take. But it just so happens they came in at a flat cap time with COVID and all that kind of stuff like that. But fortunately for them, they win a cup with this roster, and that takes a little off the edge of all of this mess that they're in now.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's hard to say. You would think they would want to still, of course, lose Tyler Johnson, but if nobody was going to take him off waivers, how are you going to? It looks like they're going to have to actually add a pick or something to get rid of Tyler Johnson to a team like Detroit or Tampa Bay, or bottom feeders that know they're going to be not in it next year. And that might be as high as a first-round pick, which I would be loath to do. So either that, or something that I think we're probably going to discuss is you either trade Cirelli, and centers like that are just so hard to find. And if we look at their roster, with Stamkos, who knows where his career is going to go? There's not much besides Johnson that you can do up the middle there if you trade him away. I wouldn't want to keep Johnson and lose Cirelli for sure.
Yeah.
So if we look, and then I guess the only other thing then is you go to their defense, and the two people they have to sign is Cernak and Sergachev. Like I said, they have Foote coming up and possibly fill a hole there, and one of those guys have to go. So that's hard to swallow, and not get anything roster-wise in return.
Yeah, that's obviously it's going to be a tough decision to make for sure. I can't see them losing Anthony Cirelli. That's got to be their top priority as far as who they're going to re-sign. Centers like that just don't come around. He's only 23. He's a legitimate second-line center now. He proved that this past season. I don't. They've got so much that they have to do. I can't. I don't see a way for them to bring back Chernak and Sergachev. I don't think they could any possibly way bring back both of those guys. And we were talking earlier about, which one would you trade? I think you would probably try and trade the one with the most value and get back what you can get back for them. But the thing, they can't get a lot back. They're in no position of power in these trade negotiations at all. All the leverage belongs to whoever they're trading with, because they have to make a move, and they're in a situation where they're probably not going to get nearly as much back as you would think, and they can't take a player back because they have to just dump salary somehow. They can't take a player back, so. Does that lead to trading Mikhail Sergachev? As much as you wouldn't want to do that as the Tampa Bay Lightning, you may not have a choice at this point. Or do you have to package in him and someone else into a deal? There are only a few teams that could take that kind of money on. If they do end up trading a guy like Sergachev, I'll take trading Cirelli off the board for right now because I don't think they want to do that. He's probably their most important guy to bring back. You're either trading Chernak or Sergachev. If Sergachev's certainly going to have a huge market out there, teams are going to want a player like him. He was so good for them in the playoffs, but who can actually take on Sergachev without sending money back? The cap situation here for not just the Lightning, but a lot of these teams is very, very tight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, running down, there were teams that came to mind. The first team that comes to mind is a team that probably should have already had him in their lineup. They did a ridiculous move by taking Nylander instead of Sergachev in the draft when Sergachev got drafted. That was crazy. I was like, what? I mean, it was when Vancouver took Levy, I was like, okay. But then Buffalo it was crazy. But anyways, I'm talking about the Buffalo Sabres, and they certainly, looking at their defense, could, to put it mildly, use a Sergachev in that lineup. They
Absolutely.
do have cap room at $13 million. Now they have Victor Olofsson and Reinhart to sign, and they would have to do some things like maybe trade one of them or what have you to fit it in. But I think they would be knocking on. I think they'd be calling.
Absolutely. Yeah, but Buffalo is a team that you look at, and that defense is horrendous. They've got Rasmus Dahlin, and he's already their best defenseman. And after that, I mean, you've got Ristolainen. McCabe's pretty good, but playing, I think, too big of a role with Buffalo. Colin Miller, Brandon Montour. I mean, these are guys. This is not a good defense core when you look at the Buffalo Sabres. No. Adding a guy like Sergachev would be absolutely massive for Buffalo. So, they do have some money. I think they'd probably have to make a deal before that. They'd also probably want to get rid of. They have a logjam of defensemen, just most of them aren't very good. But they'd have to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd have to get rid of some of these defensemen off the roster. Probably, a lot of these are depth guys that you could easily probably just waive, like a Brandon Davidson or a Matt Irwin. Those guys aren't bringing you much there. Those are kind of roster filler players at this point.
Yeah. But they're not bringing you much room either. So
yeah, exactly. So, but Buffalo is definitely a team that makes sense, and they do have a decent amount of money to work with. I think another team that could desperately need defensive help is the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. The thing about the Florida Panthers is, I mean, they already didn't sign Dodonov. It looks like they're not signing Hoffman. Ownership did come out and say that they were going to par down their salaries. And for good reason. I mean, Florida is not the best market As far as fans are concerned, it's a building organization. They blew how much on 10 million on Bobrovsky.
10 million on Bobrovsky. Yep.
I'm sure the owner was pretty steamed that they, weren't better than they are. So he's like, look, it didn't work. So we're going to par this down. I would just have to think that maybe if Zito can convince the owner, like if we got somebody like Sergachev in here, for sure, this team can be a playoff potential roster. And I'm not even sure if that's the case, but if he can convince them to do that,
yeah,
it would definitely be huge for this roster, because as it stands right now, I like Riley Stillman. But do you really want to be dependent on Riley Stillman all year in a condensed schedule to be your second left defense? I don't. They still got to sign Mackenzie Weegar, and I like him too, actually. But I think both of those guys are tradable for a pick or something like that, because Weegar's a restricted free agent. And if you can bring in neither one of those guys are going to be Sergachev. So if they could bring in Sergachev to play in that top four, now you're talking about a very reasonable top four in Florida.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've got Ekblad. Yandel is getting up there in age now, mid-30s, but he still puts points on the board. Anton Strawman, another older guy, he plays the right side. I would think if they were to make a move for a guy like Sergachev, then Weegar would probably automatically get traded at that point. Stillman probably becomes your third pair left guy, and Sergachev. I think Sergachev could even play top pair on that Florida team, and then Yandel would drop down to the middle pair and then play more of a power play, probably power play unit type guy. But adding Sergachev, I love Mackenzie Weegar. I think Riley Stillman might end up being really a solid. I like
both of those guys a lot.
Yeah, for sure. But neither of those two are going to be what Sergachev is.
No.
Sergachev is 22 years old, and he's going to be a top end defenseman on a top pair. So. I think
Norris candidate down the road. He might get to there.
He certainly has the potential to. So that would just be such a massive boost to this Florida defense. And we know that the Panthers can score. I mean, they've been one of the top offensive teams, and yes, they've lost Hoffman and Dadonov, but I look at their forward group and like this team should be able to score a decent amount of goals. It's the defense that's been such a problem for them. Sergachev would just be such a massive, massive boost.
I agree, and if they can convince the owner to pony it up and then work whatever they have to work to make it, I think it would be a good boon for them. Talking about this, then you're starting to hear some teams that will probably be on the phone, so that would bode well for Tampa, because they're gonna. Hopefully, I mean, like you said, they're not in the best position to trade right now.
Yeah.
But you can get more teams competing for it. They just might be able to get a return out of it.
Yeah, for sure. They don't have a lot of leverage, but if they can kind of start a bidding war between other teams, all looking into this, then they might be able to salvage somewhat of a decent return for a player as good as Sergachev. But we were talking earlier, and both of us agreed on one team that I think is our number one most likely team that would be in on this, and that has certainly the money to do it, and that is the New Jersey Devils.
Yes.
The need and the cap space are both there very much with New Jersey. They've got over $18 million in space, so they could take on this kind of money without even thinking twice about it. And there's an obvious need for defense in New Jersey, without a doubt.
Yeah, I would say so. You trade for Ryan Murray, who, if he's in the lineup, is meh, and then Will Butcher, who never could figure out how to play in his own zone, has been a disappointment. and then a young kid who is probably going to be very good in Ty Smith.
Ty Smith should be coming up. Yeah, hopefully
should be coming
soon.
up on the left side. But besides that, there's not much in the cupboard for New Jersey. And the motivation to add a player like this for them would be enormous. So, and the good thing for Tampa Bay would be is all of those teams are in the East. I looked at teams in the West, and there was really nobody that made sense at all. So they're all going to be competing with each other. And somebody like Florida or Buffalo, even if they think they're probably not going to end up getting it, they're going to want to up that price as much as possible for New Jersey. That's what competition's all about, right? So make that team as weak as we possibly can. So I imagine if we had those three, I think the first next year would be in play. I think they could get it to that point where they're at least offering up their first next year for Sergachev. And if I'm Tampa Bay, if I can get more than the first next year, I'd be very, very happy. But I think that's probably what'll do it. The first person to say, first out of those teams to say, I'll give you my first next year, especially in New Jersey, because and a non-lottery protected, an unlottery protected.
Yeah.
First next year. You would think that Sergachev would actually bring in more than that, but with the position that Tampa's in, I don't think it would bring much more.
No, they have no leverage in any of these talks. So, if you're going to get a first round pick back for basically a guy that you couldn't afford, then I think you have to do that if you're the Lightning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think they're getting a first back from Chernak.
No, I don't think so.
And next year is a big defense draft. There's like 3 or 4 guys there that are considered possible number 1 defensemen that could go in the top 10. So but I agree with you. New Jersey has the most motivation. They have the most cap space. I mean, they would be salivating to get a Sergachev in that lineup for sure. Oh my gosh. And then even on the right side, Severson probably is not really a 1-2. PK Subban's supposed to be, but he's not.
Yeah.
And then Connor Carrick would be like what, on the 8th, maybe an 8 guy on good teams.
Most teams, yeah, absolutely. He'd be very similar to a Luke Shen type. Yeah.
To level of talent, I would say something like that. So I agree. I think that if this is to happen, with all likelihood, New Jersey would be the team that would be most motivated to acquire him, or would eventually offer up the most to do that, and makes the most sense to me for that to happen. And man, for New Jersey fans, that would be a very a breath of fresh air after watching that defense for the last however long. I mean, poor guy like Blackwood and Schneider having to play behind those guys for as long as they have. I'm really rooting for Schneider now going to the island, right? To be able to show what I think he's going to have a good year. But yeah, for sure, New Jersey all the way.
Yeah, I look at Sergachev would instantly become New Jersey's best defenseman. So that in itself, that's the motivation right there for the Devils to go out and make a move like this. And they certainly have the space to be able to do it as well.
Yeah. What do you think they're going to sign Sergachev for? I'd try to get him long-term right away, right?
Oh, yeah. That would be instantly like a 7-year deal. He's only 22. I would be in on a big, big contract for him.
8, maybe 7. It's like try to get him at $7.5 million. I don't know if he bite on that, but if he would, 5 years from now, that looks fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely would be all in on that. So switching gears here a little bit, there's another. Tampa is a team that has to make a move, and there's been a lot of trade talks involving them. There's another player that's been talked about with as far as trades go for quite some time now, and that is Patrik Laine of the Winnipeg Jets. And those talks have been heating up again this offseason. There's been a lot of discussion around him. I know that you just did a video on the Laine trade talks and potential moves that could be made for him. What do you what do you think about Laine and where he could end up if he does get traded?
Yeah. I'll name a couple teams, but I won't name the number one team. You got to go check out my video for that. But also, I'd like to just look at that whole situation in Winnipeg with what happened with Laine and the fact that he's going out of town. Laine has really taken a lot of flack for being a guy who's just not bought in and all of those things like that. And I like to stick up for him a little bit because nobody really said much about Trouba when Trouba was doing that, or at least I didn't hear much about it. And I don't know why, because Trouba did similar to what Laine is doing right now. And if you look at the way Trouba was treated, he was playing in a 5-6 spot when he was quite obviously a top 4 defenseman for them for the time that he was there. And then when they go into contract talks, they're trying to give him 5-6 money. Well, that looks pretty bad. If you want to tell a guy, okay, you got to earn your way up the lineup, whatever the case may be, you better make sure that he's not clearly already good enough to be up in that lineup.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm Trouba, if I was Trouba's agent and Trouba himself, I probably would have did much the same. And I saw the same thing with Laine. Laine was playing with Brian Little a lot of the time, very injured Brian Little, and propping up a third line that was not made for his skill set. And he was still potting 25 to goals. This guy can score 40 goals with a good center, I think. And so now they're going into contract talks, and it appears Winnipeg's doing the exact same thing that they did with Trouba, and he's like, I'm fed up. Yeah. And they might even have backpedaled on it, but he's like, no, you did it to Troubs. Now you're doing it to me. I want out of here. I don't think it has to do with the city of Winnipeg. I don't think it has to do with any of that. In fact, his own teammates have said he loved Winnipeg. He loved the fans and all that kind of stuff like that. Never talked poorly about anything like that. It's just this situation. So, he's on his way out. I wanted to just kind of defend him a little bit to people out there that are thinking that he is just some sort of, egotistical whatever. I just don't think it is. But so anyways, we're back into those situation here where Winnipeg has kind of shot themselves in the foot because we just talked about how trading right now it's a buyer's market, not a seller's market, right?
Absolutely.
So some of the teams that would be looking I think a lot, but here though there's a bigger pool, and one of the teams that I would say that would be interested if they don't do what we were talking about with Sergachev would be the Buffalo Sabres, simply because it seems to be their mandate to make Jack Eichel as happy as possible.
Yeah.
And if having Taylor Hall and Laine there certainly would go a long ways to do that, I would say, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. That would talk about loading up your top line there. That would be something to have those three together.
That would be a crazy line. Of course, then if they're not able to better their defenses, we already talked, their defense is definitely not one of the top half of the league. You might as well score.
Yeah.
So
score a lot.
A lot. Yeah. With that defense there. So that was my first team that I looked at as a possibility. Just because of that reason. Who would you say would be out there that would be interested? That you think would be interested?
I think this could be a move that the Columbus Blue Jackets would be thinking about. They've got almost 13 million in cap space, and they cleared a lot of cap right before free agency, getting rid of Ryan Murray, getting rid of Nudi Vara. They cleared cap space. Now they still need to re-sign Pierre-Luc Dubois, but that's a team that I think they were probably in on some of the free agent scorers, but didn't get any of them. And that's a team that certainly could use an offensive boost. And bringing in a winger like Laine to probably play with Pierre-Luc Dubois would be a big-time move for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Oh, for sure. If they can manage to find a way to acquire somebody like that, I think he'd actually be better suited to play with Max Domi, to tell you the honest truth. Max Domi's more of a passer. Dubois is more of a guy that drives to the net and likes to have the puck on his stick.
Yeah.
So I would think more like Cam Atkinson with Dubois and Domi with Laine may be the better fit. But, sometimes everything on paper looks like something, but when you get them on the ice, it just works for reasons that don't make sense sometimes.
Yeah.
So that could very well be the case. But the one thing we do know for sure is that Columbus definitely had problems scoring in the playoffs, and it was pretty much the reason why they didn't go further than they did. So, yes, I think they would be salivating pretty hard over someone like Laine. One thing I kind of mentioned in my video as well, because funny you mentioned it, I brought up the Columbus as well in my video, that it would be a little difficult for them to think of them giving up one of their defense now after doing some of the moves they've already made. That would be a lot off that defense to pick up somebody like Laine. But wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. They've already lost, two D-men out of that group. And, the depth isn't what it was with those guys gone now. I mean, they still have Jones and Werenski, Savard, and they've got to re-sign Gavrikov. He had a pretty good year, but now you're looking at, Dean Kukin, Scott Harrington, Gabriel Carlson kind of being the guys who are going to fight for those bottom pair spots. And then beyond that, I don't know if they have much down in the minors as far as D goes. But
Andrew Peeke has played a little bit. I mean, that could be a guy that they could think is ready, 22 years old, right defenseman, and looks like he's big, strong, not a bad player so far.
Yeah, you'd really have to, if you were to give up another defenseman, and there's been talks about David Savard possibly being the one that gets moved. If you're going to give someone like that up and not get a defenseman back in return, you're pushing the depth defensively for sure, having already gotten rid of Nudivara and Murray. So it would mean, it'd be an interesting move, and you'd have to think about, how bad do they want to add offense to this team
and lose to that type of defense. I guess the good thing about it is Werenski and Jones can play half the game each. So
yes, that's true.
And you could try to work with what you got, and then as the season goes along, there'll be more cap space available because of people had already been paid out half their year, and then add from then. So it's a possibility. I think it's a really good possibility that they take the chance. I don't know how comfortable Torts is going to be with Dean Kukan being in your top four on your starting lineup, though.
I don't know. That doesn't sound good when you think about it, but
yeah, it doesn't go down real well. No. I love Gavrikov though. I really think he had a good year, but I think he's going to be a very, very good top four defenseman. So
yeah,
it would be just filling that last top four that you're giving up in order to get Laine, and that's just a question of whether they want to do that or not, I guess.
Yep. All right. Well, we're pushing half an hour here, so
are we?
Yeah, already. But we could talk hockey all day. But
yeah.
Again, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And we'll definitely love to do this again in the future for sure on both of our channels.
Absolutely. I hope this can be a regular thing. I enjoy working with you a lot. Also, we did another one together on free agency that I really love, that one that we did. And so you can check that out as well. I'm doing a series myself on each team and their work in the off season. And I think the next one I'd like to do is either Buffalo or Calgary, and I'd like to do that with you, John. So be looking out for that. And
I will.
Thanks again, man. This is so much fun. I love it.
Yeah, it's great talking hockey with you always. Thanks so much for coming on. And guys, definitely check out Pearlo's channel. It will be linked in the description as always. And definitely hit that subscribe button on his channel as well. And I'll be certainly making some appearances on there, doing some fun hockey talk as well. So with that, have a great day, everyone. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be talking to you guys soon.